I'm 81.
And when did you start in service?
I started, well I didn't start too soon because I was needed at home because we were a pretty large family. My father was a miner, there was a few of us living at home. I went into service and it's the most wonderful story. So I'm just going to say to you, when some constable or other used to keep his eye on us and he told him this lovely story and then I went on to write it, that every year the constabulary in Millom had a ball, and that was the dance, but they called it the grand name of a ball. And they made enough money every year to give the poverty-stricken children of Millom a pair of clogs. So from every year, because I'd outgrown the previous years, I got a pair of clogs. And I've got a book in my possession, Never Absent, Never Late. Now I used to late children to school, L-A-I-T, the late in it, so I was never absent, never late, and to keep the attendance up at school, I used to go out and late them. It was warmer in bed than going to school, and some were absent because they were turning the mangle for mother, and some were minding the baby, and some were washing the dishes, and some were doing this, that and the other, but the chiefest reason was no shoes to my feet. Right, now, never happened to me because the police provided me with a pair of clogs. I loved the constabulary because they provided me with a means to escape from the world, an education, and all those wonderful things by their annual dance.
You didn't have footwear around the home as well?
Well, there wasn't anything else, like nobody had any shoes or anything. I had a pair of Sunday shoes. I had a pair of Sunday shoes because I went to Sunday school and church, you see, chapel. Right, but there was no clogs, there was no people. That was the chiefest excuse when I went out, you know. When I got in the top form, I passed for the scholarship, and this was a grammar school here then, and I passed for the scholarship, but I couldn't come because I didn't have any clothes, and I only had clogs, and how could you come to a grammar school with clogs and rags? And so I stopped in the top class 3 years, and I used to go out late and all these kids in from school. The chiefest excuse was not coming because there's no shoes to my feet. I was bare feet in the 20s in this town.
Does that mean you would not go outside?
Yes,
or?
well we did because we always had clogs, my little family. My family had
but for kids that didn't have clogs?
I don't know what happened to them, but they went barefoot sometimes. They did go barefoot in the hungry 20s. Yes, they did. Yes, but this wonderful shoe and clog fund, they called it. So I wondered if they gave shoes to the grammar school children, but it was clogs for me, I know. It was wonderful. And one of my proudest possessions is, teacher must have looked at me and said, oh, I'm going to give her that. When I was about 9, general proficiency in attendance, I got a book called A Pair of Clogs. I thought that was for me. There is a book written about bogs, toilets, lavs, loos, and my father flatly refused it to call it anything else but the water closet all his life. But so you consult the book if you want to be very clever. But this is a very fine example of a lavatory with a mahogany seat and beautiful porcelain foot and head, and beautifully porcelain inside. So I'm going to sit on the bog now. Can I just tell you that I'll tell you about some of the bogs I've known. Well, I'm sitting on this water closet, but I'm going to go back a bit to what I said before, to the outside lavatory where there were a wooden platform with holes cut in it and lids that would let down. Now there were sometimes 2 and sometimes 3, and you might wonder about sharing the lavatory in company with other people. But you know, in those days there wasn't such reticence about going to the lavatory as is today, and there weren't so many lavatorial jokes. Everybody simply has to go to the lavatory sometime. And of course, this is why we've got these 2 haulers and 3 haulers. Some of them are big and some of them are small, and I imagine that there's a mother sitting there, you know, and she's got her hand round a child, and she's training this child to use the lavatory instead of using the potty as formerly. Now, into the buckets or receptacles below would fall all refuse, and I'm going to be very rude and vulgar now, because we don't use these words in polite company. I'm going to say all the shit and the piss went into the buckets below. Now, if you lived in a country district, that would be very hard to dispose of. You wouldn't have the night soil, the night shit men coming around to take it away. And I remember when I was a girl, and it's 70 years ago, we went for a charabanc trip round Witcham Valley, and we stopped at the Fox and Goose. It's still there, but it's now 2 cottages. It was formerly a hostelry, a pub. And of course, this drink of lemonade went right through us. We had to go to the loo, and it was a 2-hauler, and I asked all them tonight. That's why I learned. I learned about these things then, because I asked. And by the way, they grew the most wonderful tomatoes there, because lavatory seeds pass through your system, digestion system entirely. And so when they threw this shit on the land to manure it, the tomato plants grew. Betty and I are going to show you a pair of wedding knickers. They're pre-traders. Step into each leg like this, and each leg, and pull the drawstring round your waist. Now then, they may laugh at them, but believe me, every lady of quality wore these. Not ordinary ladies. Ordinary ladies did not wear any underwear at all. But it is recorded in Millom. Oh, and I must mention that Queen Victoria must have worn thousands of these, because every museum in the country has a pair. Right? But I must say that in Millom here lived, in the early part of this century, Kate Ward, who stood astride of the drains and did her job, did her natural job, and there was no need to open any buttons or any ribbons. Now here I am in the kitchen, and I'm going to commence my daily duties. But my missus is sitting there, can you see? She's poking the fire, and she's probably wanting a cup of tea. So I shall tell you about this wonderful warm place. It was the centre of all homes, and the range was the centre of everything, provided heat and warmth and hot water, etc. So, first thing in the morning I lit the fire. And I lit the fire personally for my father-in-law, who was a miner, for my father, who was a miner for 60 years down Hogbarrow. And we had to light the fire so that he could have a tea bottle made up, and the porridge was in the oven all night long. And there is the oven over there. So the oven kept warm all night long. Before you really use the hot oven though, you opened the door to make sure the cat wasn't in there, because it was the favourite place for the cat to sleep, and especially in cold winters. So this was the central point of the whole home. In front of it, you let the bread rise. And you know that magical chemical, yeast, it's working away under that cloth, and it is making the bread rise. In front of the fire, their warm bread tins are warming, because cold and extreme heat kills yeast. So just everything has to be gentle and warm. The kettle is constantly singing on the hob, and the big frying pan can be let down from the lazy arm onto the fireplace. It must have had gargantuan breakfasts. Can I also show you where we got our hot water from? Our hot water was from here. You fill that every day with a lading can. The lading can's here. And you fill that every day with cold water from the tap. And then you had constant hot water all day. We don't have a little brass spigot on here, like some fireplaces do. But you just, in some places, you would just turn the brass spigot and out come the hot water. But in this case, you ladled it out with a ladling can. So it's a very arduous task to brush. And there's the black-red brush, and you did that religiously and daily. Everything went on round the fireplace. When you had earache, you sat on the end of the curb there and put a hot flannel on your ear, and the warmth cured the earache. So there was the central point of the whole kitchen.
Most prized possessions in the house. By the way, the cover or the fringed material around here is called a lambecue, or lambrequin in English. Of course, nearly everybody had brass candlesticks. The obligatory clock. Money boxes were quite a thing. A pretty little one here. Then we have the little set with the vases and the clock, and the china figure. Not really, I suppose, a Staffordshire type figure on the end, along with a postcard, which obviously somebody had been on holidays. Above that we have the overmantel with its mirror and pictures, and of course the gas bracket. One thing we forgot to mention earlier about the range, that we have here a brick which would be heated instead of the hot water bottle. A special made brick would be heated on the fire. Going a little bit farther on, we have a tea caddy hanging on the wall, and that was advertising Maserati's tea. Beside it we have an embroidery which would be done by a soldier, probably recovering after being injured in the First World War. Beneath that we've a little stand with a clay pipe and the spills for the man of the house.
You know, after anaesthetics were invented and Queen Victoria made it fashionable to have chloroform, and ladies wanting to keep their slender waists, perhaps after childbirth, they had their 2 bottom ribs taken out to achieve 18-inch waists. Nature conservation, because if I tell you that this is a genuine feather boa and it is made of marabou and you can feel the little bones, and every lady of fashion throughout the entire world wore these in the 90s, the 100s, the 110, the 20s, and do you wonder that those beautiful birds have gone to extinction? But that is a genuine feather boa. But we'll go then to the ridiculous. We'll go to the ridiculous. And this is how ladies confined themselves in the late century and the early part of the last century. So they confined themselves with corselets. This is a corselet. And I can't imagine why this one's so pretty, because corselets were not to be seen, but this is black and white and got lovely flowers on it, and that is also a corset. And people contorted themselves into such shapes it's impossible to believe, and that is what made childbearing the last century so very, very dangerous. Put it down the floor. I'm going to show you a lovely thing now, a most beautiful, beautiful thing. Now this is a trousseau nightie from 1914. Betty is modelling beautifully a trousseau nightie from the 1940s war. It belonged to Miss Maria Woods, and she was engaged to a soldier, and alas, he didn't come back. But the lovely thing about this is, once again, the linen buttons designed to go through the mangle, and the most beautiful broderie anglais. Remember that, English lace. But in the back, why I prize this so much, in the back, you cannot see it, but in the back there is the trademark of the CWS Converse, and the CWS. So that is a very unique article. Right, I'm going to show, once again, Betty will show you a bodice. Now this bodice is different than other ones she wore, because this one is a plain everyday bodice. It is made of unbleached calico, because unbleached calico would be as much as little as threepence a yard when that was made. So I'm going to show you what women envelop themselves in. How they walked, I'll never know. Women envelop themselves in such large amounts of material. This is best English cotton, and it is handmade lace, and this is called a petticoat, and it would be worn right up till the 1920s by people I know used those in the 1920s. My last article that I brought, the last article I'm going to show you, okay, because we're coming right up to the 1940s now, and I'm going to show you a pair of Vidonis knickers, and they were sold by the Co-op and many other places. Warm as toast and very snug, and I assure you that they came right down to the knees. Our clock on the wall, I see it stopped, Betty. It has it not gone recently?
No,
But
no.
I've gone into the history of these clocks in this town. They cost 10 shillings each, and they were sold on the Royal Green, which was then a place for travelling fairs, etc. And my father-in-law bought one for 10 shillings. What else can I... Everything here has got a use. Everything has been used and proved to be used. So you've got rag ruggers on the floor. Nothing was ever thrown away, not even the shabbiest, raggiest of rags. So, made on a canvas back and made with prodders. You see, we've got 2 rag ruggers on the floor. Now, nothing was ever thrown away, not even the raggiest rags. Alas, bright colours didn't dominate because most people dressed in dark colours, which lasted better. But these were made on a rug frame. The rug frame has got little holes in it, and you stretched your canvas, which in this case happened to be Hessian, and you stretched it out there, and you could fold it in, and then you're able to do it tautly, so nothing was slack. You cut your rags up according to a pattern, and some people had guides and some people didn't, but it was a very arduous task, especially when your scissors were blunt. And that was one of the things that in those days the scissor grinder came round very, very regularly. You paid him the most meagre sum, maybe a penny, to sharpen your scissors, but it was most imperative that you had the scissors sharpened, or else you had very sore fingers. They were cut into respective strips and all colours and sorted out into bundles, and then they were prodded into the canvas, and they were called prodders, and some men made lovely ones, and some were just pegs fashioned into prodders, and some proud fathers made nice polished ones for the wives and families, and I'm sure that they go down as heirlooms. You were very, very lucky if you had a bit of bright blue or red. You made, didn't you, Mrs.
Yes.
Didn't you make
Yes.
beautiful patterns with
Absolutely.
the bright blue and the red?
Absolutely.
Yes, and that's so. But that was your fancy one for your best bedroom or your front door. But they got dirtier and shabbier by the year, and let me tell you that they were so arduous to shape and so mucky that you were glad to get rid of them. I was glad for one to get rid of them. Well, I'm dressed for the afternoon. I would not be working with these things in the afternoon. All these things would be done in the morning, such as vacuuming with the Star vacuum cleaner, the very earliest of its type. Nor would I be cleaning the lavatories with the brush and the bucket and the lid in the afternoon. All that would be accomplished in the morning when you wore a blue uniform. You changed in the afternoon to black and white. Just look at this wonderful old machine. If I tell you that this is more than 100 years old, it is a complete washing machine. And how do I know it's 100 years old? It is engraved in iron on it. It was the improved washer of 1898. And I believe it would cost about £1 and 12 shillings in old money. It was made at Accrington in Lancashire, because that tells you on there. But it also tells you on iron, here, the date when it was made. So it is a wonderful machine. I wonder where it went when I was around, when I was young. Well, it is done by centrifugal force, just like washers are done today. There's a cage inside the box, and you would move aside the catches and load in your washing. You have previously heated your washer, your washing water, in the set pot of a copper. So you would put this in by bucketsfuls in here with the suds of the time, which were soft soap and shredded up soap, when that last modern washing powders hadn't made their appearance. And believe you me, you would be able to wash 4 minutes flat with this, using the wheel. This wheel, it is change up, I'm sorry, for safety, because children are so adventurous today, but we did wash with this in the early days and it produced really nice washing. I'm going to take away the lid, because I'm going now. Right, I'm going to move to the other side, because this wheel operates the mangle. But first we've got here 2 round wheels, and this makes the mangle thinner. And hear the squeak, isn't that wonderful? So you can put thick things through or thin things through according to how you do the wheels. So at the end of that washing period, you would open up the cage again and feed through the rollers the wet washing. But if you're a child, you do this for mother before you went to school in the morning, because many, many mothers had to take washing in to make a living and to feed the children. And I have talked to many, many people who've had mangled fingers as a result. Many elderly people have had mangled fingers as a result. I have talked to them in here. But I'm going to progress, because I'm going to empty through the brass spigot, through the brass tap. I'm going to empty out all the sudsy water, and you may use that for something like washing the flags or cleaning the sink or something. Then you're going to fill this up with clean water, and into it, that clean water, you are going to squeeze the Dolly Blue bag. Now it's a powder, ultramarine. It was made at the Back Barrow Blue Works. And when I tell children about this washing, because they're so fascinating, I tell them, go home and look at mother's washing powder, and please see if you can see any little blue sprinkles in, because that does the same thing as our Dolly Blue did in the olden days. She squeezed this Dolly Blue bag till the water became as blue as the sky, and then you gave it 2 or 3 experimental swishes with that wheel to distribute the bluing water through the whites. And then you turn this mangle and spread everything out very neatly through there before you hung them out to dry. But this mangle hadn't finished its job. Then you may think, wash your day's over, and no. At the end of the day, you helped your mother to fold the sheets, the tablecloths, the towels, and everything like that. And you put them through smoothly and carefully so that they didn't need any ironing. So this is when you turn the wheel round to the full extent, you see, because you got them as smooth as can be. Now, I told you before about the clothing. The little linen buttons were invented specially to deal with the wooden rollers, because bone buttons and the other kind, they weren't plastic in those days, so there was something else. They split and sunder and were spoiled. So linen buttons went through these mangle rollers very well indeed. I do wish this machine had been around when I was young.